It started as one of those trips you plan for months. My wife, Sarah, and I had been together for 5 years, and we finally decided to celebrate our anniversary with something special. An isolated cabin in the mountains. No phone signal, no distractions, just us and nature. I remember packing my bag with a feeling of excitement mixed with that stupid hope that this trip would somehow reconnect us after a rough few months. We hit the road early in the morning and Sarah was all smiles, her hand in mine, her voice full of plans for hikes, quiet mornings over coffee and lazy evenings by the fire. The first few hours were perfect. The air was crisp, smelling of pine and cold streams, and the only sounds were our footsteps and the rustling leaves. I felt a rare sense of calm I hadn't experienced in a long time. But that calm was short-lived. As we drove deeper into the mountains, Sarah started acting distracted. She kept glancing at her phone, hiding it quickly whenever I looked her way. I thought maybe she was just anxious, worried about missing something, but I didn't press her. We reached the cabin just as the sun started to dip behind the trees, casting an orange glow over everything. The place was charming: wooden walls, a stone fireplace, a deck overlooking a small lake. I unpacked our bags while Sarah went inside to start the fire. I was eager to relax, to forget about work and stress. But then, as I was hunting for a signal, my phone suddenly buzzed with a notification. That's when I saw it, an incoming message from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then unlocked my screen. It was a photo. Not just any photo, but one that hit me like a punch. There they were, Sarah and my best friend Mike, lying in bed together inside the cabin. The picture was grainy but clear enough. Her hair tangled, his hand on her waist, and a look in her eyes I will never forget. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. I stared at the screen, feeling the heat rise in my chest. The world around me seemed to slow down. I pressed my finger to the phone, trembling, and looked again. The message was from Mike. "Can't believe we pulled it off. Happy anniversary, babe." That word "babe" made my blood boil. I clenched my fists, my palms sweaty, as I stood there in the woods with the cold wind biting my face. I could see her through the window, pouring what looked like wine, her back turned. I didn't say a word. I just backed away slowly, my mind racing. My knees felt weak and my stomach twisted. How long had this been going on? Who else knew? I kept replaying the moment I last saw her, her kisses, her smiles, while she was probably in that bed with Mike, laughing, touching, pretending everything was fine. I had trusted her. I had believed in us. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch, staring out over the lake, feeling betrayed and furious. The cold air soaked through my jacket, but my skin felt like it was burning from the inside out. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her innocent smile that I now knew was a lie. I kept thinking about how I'd been out there, searching for a signal, completely unaware of what was happening just inside that cabin. My best friend, my wife, my world, had been making a mess of everything while I was lost in the mountains, trying to fix something that was already broken. The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep this bottled up. I had to come up with a plan, not just to leave her behind, but to make sure she paid for what she did. I hadn't decided exactly how yet, but I knew I wouldn't let her get away without consequences. The betrayal was too deep, the pain too raw. I just needed to get through the day, keep calm, and figure out how to turn this nightmare into my revenge. I looked at the cabin's window one last time. They still hadn't come out. I could see her silhouette inside, moving around. I clenched my jaw, feeling the first flicker of my plan forming. She thought she'd gotten away with it. That was her mistake. She'd see soon enough that she'd been caught in my trap and the game was only just beginning. Would she even suspect what I was planning? That thought made a cold shiver run down my spine. I needed to be careful, patient, precise. But right now, all I could think about was the image, the grainy photo that would haunt me forever. And I knew that from this moment on nothing would be the same. By the time the sun rose higher, the tension in my chest felt like a live wire. I kept replaying the photo over in my mind, each time more vivid, more infuriating. Sarah was still inside, probably thinking everything was fine. She had no idea I'd seen her with Mike. Their secret, now exposed, burned into my mind like an unforgiving scar. I needed to act, but I also needed to keep my cool. That was the hard part. After a long, cold breakfast in silence, I decided to go for a walk just to clear my head. The woods around the cabin were dense, whispering with sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. I knew I had to be smart about this. I wasn't going to confront her right away. I needed evidence, something that would hold up if I ever decided to call her out in front of everyone. But more than that, I needed to see how deep this betrayal went. Was Mike just a fling, or was this something more? I wandered further into the woods, trying to stay calm and composed. My hands were still shaking a little and my stomach felt like a knot of steel. I kept my phone in my pocket, not wanting to risk another discovery, but I had to be cautious. I looked around, trying to spot anything that might tell me more, some discarded wrapper, a piece of clothing, anything that could confirm her lies. That's when I saw it: footprints. Fresh ones, leading straight from the cabin's back porch into the woods. I crouched down, trying to keep my breathing steady. The footprints were muddy but clear, and I could see the pattern of shoes that I recognized instantly: Mike's. That was enough for me to confirm she'd been sneaking around. I looked at my own boots, then back at the footprints, feeling a strange mixture of anger and pain. I clenched my fists. "They're definitely hiding something," I muttered under my breath. "And I'm going to find out what." I followed the trail, my pulse pounding in my ears. I needed to see if there was more. Maybe a piece of clothing left behind, or some sign of where they'd gone. The trail led to a small clearing, where I found more evidence: an empty beer can, some lipstick smudges on a rock, and a torn piece of fabric. It felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a quick fling. They'd planned this, hidden it well enough for me to be completely blindsided. I stood there, feeling the sweat trickle down my forehead despite the cool mountain air. My mind was racing. I had enough now to confirm everything, but I still wasn't ready to confront her directly. Not yet. I needed a backup plan, some leverage, something that would make her realize I wasn't going to let this slide. As I turned back towards the cabin, I noticed her car wasn't in its usual spot. A small spark of hope flickered inside me. Maybe she was out. Maybe I could get a few minutes alone, gather my thoughts, and set everything in motion. I returned quietly, trying to keep my composure, and saw her sitting on the porch, staring out at the lake as if nothing had happened. I was instantly reminded of how fake her smile looked yesterday, how she'd pretended everything was all right. Now I saw the cracks behind her eyes, the nervous flicker in her glance, the slight tremor in her hands when she thought I wasn't looking. She looked up as I approached, her face trying to mask something. "Morning," she said, voice a little too casual. "Morning," I replied coldly, keeping my tone even. "Nice day for a walk, huh?" "Yeah," she answered, rubbing her hands over her knees. "Beautiful, so peaceful out here." I took a deep breath and looked her right in the eyes. "Sarah, I saw the messages, the photos, the footprints. I know everything." Her face paled for a moment, then she blinked rapidly, trying to compose herself. "You don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, I think I do," I said. "And if you think you're going to get away with this, you're dead wrong." She looked away, biting her lip, her hands clenched into fists. "It's not what it looks like," she finally whispered. "Really? Because what I saw doesn't look good for your story. You lied to me right in my face." I felt my voice rising, but I kept control. "You and Mike, you've been screwing around from the start, haven't you?" She looked down, then slowly nodded. "Yeah, we did. I'm sorry," she said, voice small. Sorry doesn't cut it anymore," I snapped. "You're done. I want the keys to your car, your phone, everything. Pack your bags because you're leaving today." Her eyes flicked up again, pleading. "Please, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Can we just talk?" "No," I cut her off sharply. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." The coldness in my voice surprised even me. That's when I knew I had crossed a line in my own mind. I'd gone from hurt to fury, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less than her complete departure. I reached into my bag, pulling out the set of keys I'd hidden earlier, and handed them over slowly, deliberately. "Take your stuff and get out. I want you gone by the time I get back from the lake." She looked at me, tears brimming, but she didn't argue. Instead, she grabbed her purse and headed inside the cabin, her shoulders heavy with shame and regret. As I watched her go, I felt an odd sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control. The mountain air was sharp against my skin as I stepped back outside. The day was just beginning, and I knew in my gut that this was only the start. I'd made the decision to end it, but I also knew I needed to be ready for what came next. When someone betrays you this deeply, the fallout isn't just emotional. It's a war you fight with every tool you've got, and I was about to unleash mine. I stayed on the porch for a while after she went inside, just watching her silhouette through the window. Her shoulders slumped, eyes red but trying to hold back tears. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She'd pushed me to this point, and now she was paying for it. I knew I needed to stay calm to keep my head clear, but the rage simmered beneath my skin. That anger fueled me, sharpened my focus. Once she disappeared into the cabin, I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. I had taken some pictures of the footprints, the torn fabric, and the empty beer can, proof enough of her lies. But I needed something. More, something that would hit her with full force. I decided to send a message to Mike. Just a simple, calculated text. Found your footprints. You're not as clever as you think. It was a start. The idea was to make him feel trapped, to make him realize I knew everything. I knew I could use this to control the situation, to make him sweat. I set my phone down, took a deep breath, and looked around the landscape, trying to gather my thoughts. I had to plan my next move carefully. I couldn't let either of them see me as desperate or out of control. That's how you lose. I knew I had to make sure Sarah wouldn't slip away from me easily. She might be crying now, but I wasn't naive enough to believe she'd stay broken forever. She'd try to manipulate her way out of this, maybe even come back with some sob story to make me feel guilty. That's why I decided I needed leverage, something concrete she'd regret losing. I wanted her to realize that her entire life with me was now in my hands. I went inside quietly, moving through the cabin like a ghost. The place was eerily silent except for the faint sound of her packing. I caught her in the bedroom trying to stuff some clothes into her bag. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes flicked up when she saw me enter. "Leave me be," she whispered, voice cracking. "Not a chance," I said coldly, crossing my arms. "You're going to tell me everything, Sarah, and I mean everything. Who else knew? When did you start seeing Mike? How long has this been going on?" Her shoulders trembled, but she looked away. "It's none of your business." "Oh, it's very much my business now," I cut her off, "because I'm about to make sure you regret every single second of betraying me." I paused, then leaned in closer. "You might think you're clever hiding this, but I have all the evidence I need, and I'm not leaving until you spill it all." She hesitated, then burst into tears. "It was just one night. I was drunk and he was there and—" "Stop," I interrupted sharply. "You're not going to get away with pretending it was just a mistake. I saw the messages, the footprints, the torn fabric. This isn't some silly mistake, Sarah. You lied to me, betrayed everything we had, and I'm not going to let you walk away without consequences." She sank onto the bed, clutching her face. "Please don't do this. I never meant to hurt you. I was stupid, okay? I didn't think it would go this far." "Too late for that," I said, voice low and firm. "You're leaving and you're not coming back, but I'm not just going to throw you out and forget about it. No, I have a plan. You'll wish you never crossed me." Her eyes widened with fear, but she didn't say anything. I could see her realizing her options were limited. She needed to understand just how serious I was. This wasn't going to be a quick walkout. This was a lesson she'd remember. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small flash drive, the evidence I'd collected, carefully compiled. "I'm leaving this with you," I said, sliding it onto the table. "Everything I found, every message, every footprint, every lie. If you ever try to deny it again, I'll make sure everyone sees this. You're not just losing me, you're losing your reputation, your dignity, everything." She looked at the drive, trembling. "Please don't do this. I'll fix it. I swear I will." "No, Sarah, it's too late for that. You made your choice. But I do have one condition. If you want to keep any shred of dignity left, you'll stay in that cabin until I tell you to leave. No calls, no messages, no going anywhere. You're going to think long and hard about what you've lost and what you're about to lose if you keep this up." She nodded slowly, tears still rolling down her cheeks. I could see her trying to process what was happening, the shock of her world crumbling. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I had her exactly where I wanted her, cornered, helpless, and knowing that I held all the power now. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making her realize she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I turned on my heels and left her there, knowing I'd set the stage for what was coming next. The plan was in motion. The pieces were falling into place, and I knew deep down that this was only the beginning of the end for her. I had to keep my nerves steady, stay sharp, because once I pulled the trigger there would be no going back, and she'd learned that the hard way. I spent the rest of that day watching her through the window, making sure she stayed inside the cabin, quiet and subdued. Every now and then she'd glance my way, her eyes red-rimmed, lips trembling. I could feel the weight of her guilt, and honestly it was almost satisfying. She'd underestimated me, thinking she could cheat, lie, and then quietly slip away. She forgot I wasn't some naive fool. I was planning something and I was going to see it through. By late afternoon I was ready. The pieces of my plan had been slowly falling into place that morning, and now I was just waiting for the right moment. I knew Mike was probably still out there, oblivious, thinking he'd gotten away with it. I'd sent him a message that morning, just a simple text. "You think you're smart. We'll see." It was enough to rattle him. I could tell from his delayed reply that he was sweating. Good, I had a small bag with essentials, but the real payload was my phone, the evidence, and a plan for the final act. I knew Sarah would try to call Mike or contact him again, maybe even lie about her innocence. That's why I wanted to be ready to catch her in the act or, at the very least, force her to confront the truth head-on. Just as I was about to step outside, I saw her come to the window again. She looked exhausted, yet something else flickered behind her eyes, a flicker of stubbornness, maybe hope she could still salvage some of her lies. I decided to approach her, not with anger, at least not yet, but with a calm, measured tone. "Hey," I started softly, standing on the porch. "I want to talk." She looked surprised, her eyes narrowing slightly as she wiped tears from her face. "What's there to say?" "Plenty," I said, taking a step closer. "I'm not just leaving. I want to know what you're planning to do next, because I don't think you're done trying to spin this around." She hesitated, then looked away. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want the truth," I said firmly. "Are you going to keep lying, or are you ready to face what you did?" I paused, letting it sink in. "Because I already have all the evidence. You're not walking away from this without consequences." Her shoulders shook, but she finally looked back at me, eyes glassy. I didn't mean for it to get this far," she whispered. "I was stupid, okay? I thought I could manage it, and then it just spiraled out of control." "Spiraled into what?" I shot back. "A betrayal. A secret with Mike. You lied to my face every day for months, Sarah. How do you think I feel right now?" She looked down, silent for a long moment. I could see her fighting some internal battle, trying to decide whether to keep lying or admit the truth. That's when I pulled out the evidence drive, placed it gently on the table, and looked her straight in the eyes. "You want to keep pretending? Fine. But remember, I have everything. And if I hear even a word of you trying to manipulate or deny what you did, I'll make sure everyone knows your secrets. That includes your family, your friends, everyone." She swallowed hard, then finally spoke. "I was wrong. I didn't think I'd get caught. Mike told me he loved me, and I guess I just thought I could handle it and still keep everything the same. But I was wrong. I'm sorry." "Sorry," I repeated coldly. "That doesn't fix what's broken. And honestly, I don't want your apologies. I want you to understand that there are consequences for betrayal. You're lucky I'm not kicking you out immediately, but that doesn't mean I trust you anymore, not even close." She looked at the keys I handed her, then slowly reached for them. Her hands trembled, and I could tell she was realizing how much shit she was in. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "You stay here," I said. "In that cabin. No calls, no messages, no contact. You think about everything you did. When I say it's over, you leave. Maybe you'll get a second chance, or maybe not. It's entirely up to you now." She nodded, tears finally spilling over again, but this time with acceptance. "I get it," she whispered. "I messed up big time. I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me." I didn't reply. I turned around and headed back outside. Every step felt heavy, but I knew I'd set the wheels in motion. The plan was in place, the pieces falling into position. It was only a matter of time now. That night I lay on the porch again, staring up at the stars. The cool breeze brushed against my face, and I felt that strange mix of relief and anticipation. I'd done what I needed. She was contained, the evidence was waiting, and I was ready for whatever came next. The betrayal was raw, but I'd take control of this mess no matter what. I knew one thing for sure: she'd regret ever crossing me, and I was determined to make sure she never forgot it. The next morning I got up early, feeling a strange mixture of calm and readiness. I knew Sarah was still in the cabin, probably trying to figure out her next move. I kept my phone close, waiting for the moment I'd make my move. I had a plan to confront Mike face to face to make sure he understood exactly how much I knew and that I wasn't going to let him off the hook easily. But before that, I had to do one thing: make sure Sarah understood she was completely isolated, cut off from her support system, and that her lies had been exposed beyond any hope of denial. I stepped outside, feeling the crunch of gravel under my boots. The morning air was crisp, and the sun hadn't fully risen yet, casting long shadows across the yard. I approached the cabin cautiously, then knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. "Sarah," I called through the door. "We need to talk. Open up." Silence. Then finally I heard her footsteps approaching from inside. The door swung open, revealing her pale face, eyes red-rimmed but calm, at least on the surface. "You're leaving me no choice," I said bluntly, stepping inside. "I've given you enough time to think. Now I want the truth. When did this start?" She looked down, wringing her hands. "It's been a few months. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened." "Sure it did," I said, voice hardening. "And you think I'll sit here and let you play innocent? I've got all the proof, Sarah. The messages, the footprints, the torn fabric. You're caught, so just tell me why." She hesitated, then took a shaky breath. I felt trapped. Our marriage was falling apart. I was lonely and Mike was there. It just happened. I swear I never wanted to hurt you. I shook my head slowly, feeling my stomach tighten again. "That's bullshit and you know it. You made a choice, no, many choices, to cheat on me. And now you're trying to clean up the mess like it's no big deal, but I won't let that slide." "You're right," she whispered. "I screwed up, I'm sorry, but can't we just pretend none of this happened? Can't we start over?" I stared at her, feeling rage bubble up. "Start over after what you did? No chance. You think you can just apologize and everything goes back to normal? That's not how it works." Her eyes looked desperate now. "Please, I'll do anything. Just don't turn this into a disaster. I love you, I really do. I just lost my head for a moment." That was the last straw. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, holding it in front of her face. "You see this?" I asked coldly. "This is the proof I've been waiting for. You want to keep lying? I've got enough to destroy you completely." Her hands shook as she looked at the screen. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give you a choice," I said, voice like steel. "You can stay here in this cabin and think about what you did. Or I can call everyone, your friends, your family, your boss, and tell them exactly how you betrayed your husband. It's up to you." Her lips trembled. "You wouldn't do that." "Oh, I absolutely would," I said, voice low and dangerous. "But I'm not going to do it yet, because I want you to understand one thing. This isn't just about the moment. This is about the life you threw away for a fleeting moment of stupidity. And if you ever try to lie or deny again, I'll make sure everyone knows the real you. The one who cheated, lied, and broke her vows. And you'll never get that back." She finally nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Fine, I get it, I'll stay, just don't do anything crazy." "I won't," I said, stepping outside. "But I'm not finished. I need to talk to Mike, and I need to do it face to face." That's when I finally let myself feel the cold satisfaction. This was her moment of reckoning. She might think she was still in control, but I'd already put my plan into motion. I knew exactly what I'd do next, and she'd regret her betrayal every step of the way. I glanced back at the cabin, then turned toward the woods. The game wasn't over yet, but I could feel the tide turning. And this was only the beginning of her downfall. I had the evidence, the plan, and the resolve. There was no turning back now, and I was going to make sure she understood that. The mountain air sharpened my senses as I headed toward the town, ready to confront Mike. I knew their final reckoning was near, and I was going to make sure they both paid for what they'd done. The drive down from the mountains felt like a weight lifting from my chest, but at the same time, my stomach churned with a mix of anticipation and rage. I'd spent the entire night planning what I'd say to Mike, rehearsing every detail to make sure he understood exactly what kind of mess he'd gotten himself into. I wasn't going in with anger, not yet. I needed cold, calculated precision, because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure they both understood the cost of betrayal. When I parked outside his house, I felt my hands tighten into fists. The place looked normal, nothing out of the ordinary, except I knew better. I stepped out, took a deep breath, and approached the front door. No knocking. I just pushed it open and walked straight in. Mike was sitting in his living room, a beer in hand, watching TV. He looked surprised when he saw me. I could see the shock in his eyes, then the flicker of guilt. I didn't waste time. "You thought you'd get away with it," I said, voice steady. "You and Sarah planning and sneaking around. I've got the evidence. Every message, footprint, torn piece of fabric." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken. "You're done, Mike. You crossed a line, and I'm here to make sure you understand exactly what that means." He looked away, trying to act casual, but I saw the beads of sweat on his forehead. "Listen, man." "No," I cut him off. "Listen, you don't get to excuse this. You're a liar. You played me for months, and now I see the truth. You think you're clever, but you're not. I've got everything I need to ruin you, and I will if you try to deny it." He finally looked at me, voice shaky. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was caught up in it. She made me feel alive again. You gotta understand." "Oh, I understand," I snapped. "You felt alive because you knew you were screwing her behind my back. That's the only reason. Well, guess what? Now it all comes crashing down. You're gonna regret this for the rest of your life." I stepped closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Here, what's going to happen. You're going to stop contacting her. You're going to cut all ties, and you're going to stay the hell away from her, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. I'm giving you one last chance because I'm not petty, but if I find out you're still involved with her, I'll burn your reputation to the ground." He swallowed hard, nodding. "Fine, I get it. I won't bother her anymore." "Good," I said, turning to leave. "And if you think this is the end, you're dead wrong, because I'm done with the both of you. I walk away from this with my dignity intact, and you'll be left with nothing but the shame of what you did." Back outside, I felt the cold wind slap my face. I'd done what I needed, exposed them, taken back control, and set the boundaries that they'd crossed. I knew Sarah was still inside the cabin, waiting for her inevitable departure. That chapter was closing. The damage was done, and I was finally free from the betrayal that had haunted me for months. Driving away from the house, I felt an odd sense of closure. I'd lost nothing I valued: myself, my pride, my dignity. And I'd made damn sure they understood that messing with me had consequences. The pain of betrayal still stung, yeah, but I was stronger because I'd faced it head on. I turned the nightmare into a lesson I wouldn't forget. Sitting quietly in the car, I thought about what I'd tell others in the future, about the importance of trust, of listening to warning signs, of never ignoring your gut. Because sometimes the biggest red flags are right under your nose, and you just have to have the courage to see them. I reached over, grabbed the keys to my apartment, and started the engine. The city waited, but I was done wandering in the wilderness of betrayal. The chapter was closed, and I was walking forward, alone but stronger than ever. This story, my story, was about survival, about standing tall when everyone else would have fallen. And I knew one thing for sure: I would never let someone betray me like that again. Because, in the end, revenge isn't just about hurt. It's about reclaiming your peace, your dignity, and knowing that nobody, no matter how clever or charming, gets away with destroying what you built. I got my closure, and she, with her lies and her tears, got her wake-up call. That's all I needed to move on.